last night. It was, of course, going to be a Super Saturday and a Super Sunday as far as sporting action is concerned. Plenty of stuff happening. And we are here now to talk about qualifying in the Australian Grand Prix. And we just witnessed a rather intense qualifying that at one point looked like it could be featuring a four-way battle as far as teams were concerned to be making it to the front of the grid. When I say front of the grid, I don't necessarily mean pole position. Pole position, there was always one favorite, and that person did indeed end up taking pole position. I am, of course, referring to Max Verstappen. Easy pole for him, although I shouldn't actually say easy, because there were many points where it looked like he probably wasn't as comfortable with the car as he maybe wanted to be. But despite that, he managed to drag the car onto the front of on the front row and was able to take a well-deserved pole position, because his final lap, really, he pushed very hard to actually breach the time gap that was necessary to actually put some daylight between him and the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, who was only 0.0009 seconds, behind him. So it was actually a pretty good lap on his part. But the biggest talking point from this session of qualifying at Albert Park in Melbourne, well, it has to be the resurgence of course, the Mercedes cars, because again, at one point Hamilton was on provisional pole and he only missed out on pole thanks to some very, very good laps from Verstappen and his teammate George Russell. So you remember that before this, prior to this race, the last 5 races that are taking place in Australia, Hamilton had in fact been on pole for 4 of them. So 19, 18, 17, 16, he was the pole sitter. Of course, this time around, he looked like he was there. And that's in itself a surprise, because Mercedes were coming into this particular weekend thinking you're maybe competing for third in terms of maybe you're competing for a podium position. Maybe you're going to be up there in the fight. You'd be in fact competing with the Aston Martins rather than actually, being in the fight in the front of the grid with the Red Bulls. But it turns out the Mercedes cars found that little something towards the end of qualifying, and both of them are in fact on, second and third. Interestingly, it's George Russell who's second. Very, very good qualifying lap from him as well, because he finished not that far ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton, but it also means now that Russell has out-qualified Hamilton on the first 3 races of the season. It's a very good showing from Russell, and he's clearly showing plenty of signs that he's ready to actually be fighting at the front of the grid. He just needs the car from Mercedes, and for all you know, this very well might be the car that actually gets them there. We'll just quickly run through the rest of the grid. Fernando Alonso, a man who's chasing his 33rd win in Formula 1 and who just got his 100th podium in the last race. Well, he is in 4th place. Carlos Sainz is compatriot in 5th. Lance Stroll, Alonso's teammate, in 6th. Charles Leclerc in 7th. Alex Albon taking that Williams places where it definitely deserves to not be, or really, because he's kind of overperforming with that car. P8, Pierre Gasly and Nico Hulkenberg were in P10. Now, what happened there, unfortunately, with, let's say the Alpines, bit unfortunate for them, because they did look like, at least in practice, they were going to have a little bit more pace than they did. As for the other teams that will definitely be disappointed, McLaren, well, they have a home driver in Oscar Piastri, who's, of course, from Australia, not just from Australia, from Melbourne, where the race is happening. Unfortunately for him, he starts P16. But the biggest disappointment, and this is another thing we have to quickly mention, is that Sergio Perez ended up beaching the car, beaching it as in he ended up parking it in the gravel during the first session of qualifying. So instead of time, he'll be starting P20. How big a blow is that for his potential title hopes? It's a massive one, because again, Verstappen's on pole, and there was that big question mark as to whether Perez would be able to consistently take the fight to Verstappen. Well, unfortunate. He had been having problems all through the particular corner where he ended up beaching his car. Even in practice, he had banked it over there. In qualifying, same thing happened, and he didn't really look comfortable. And truth be told, neither did Max. So there is maybe a little bit of hope that, you could see a different race winner. You could maybe see the Mercs competing. Maybe Fernando Alonso puts in a blinder. You don't really know. It's going to be an interesting race for sure. And we'll, of course, be bringing you all of the updates from that. For now, though, I'm taking your leave. But thank you guys so much for joining us in this video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, leave us a comment. Also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And last but not least, don't forget to download the AajTak app as well. Plus, if you're already on our channel, you can go ahead and check out some other videos that we've done. But for now, though, from my side, goodbye, and we'll see you through the day.